So here we go. After I've got myself a brand new haircut, it is finally time to do part one of looking at all these games that is going to be happening on the opening weekend of the 2021 MLS season. Now, just like last year in terms of the preview, I am going to be splitting the preview into two parts for each match week, but this season I'm going to be splitting the preview a little bit differently than I did last season. This year I'm going to be splitting the preview based on the numerous games that happen on a specific date, and what that basically means is that for this preview I will actually only look at the first 10 games of the opening weekend's action, as all 10 games is going to be taking place on Friday and Saturday. But on Saturday, I will be doing the second part of the preview, and the second part of the preview will be featuring the last 3 games of this opening weekend's action, which all will be taking place on Sunday. So, without further ado, let us actually begin the first game of the season, which officially is going to be between the Houston Dynamo versus San Jose Earthquakes. Now, another thing that I am going to do, something that is new for this upcoming season, is that I'm also going to put not only the broadcast start time that the league basically put, but also the actual kickoff time that this game is going to take place. Because this season, the league basically announced that besides the fact that they're going to put the broadcast start time, they also are going to put the actual kickoff time, and this is just a way to solve the issue where fans have always been frustrated, where they basically tune in for a game that basically kick off like around 8 p.m. Eastern or 5 p.m. Pacific, and the game turns out didn't actually start until about 8 minutes after the advertised kickoff time is going to be. Or in national televised games, those games usually don't kick off until 25 minutes after the advertised kickoff time is going to happen. But that being said, as I mentioned, this game is going to be starting at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific in terms of the broadcast, but the actual kickoff time will not start until 7:07 p.m. local time. Now, the Dynamo, of course, drew 1-1 at home last season in their season opener against the LA Galaxy, while the Quakes, they also drew their season home opener. It was a 2-2 draw against TFC in their last season opener. And in their last 5 season opener, as I mentioned about the Dynamo drawing 1-1 against the Galaxy. Previously, they also drew 1-1, but this time it was against RSL at home, before they did win 4-0 against Atlanta United, win 2-1 against the Seattle Sounders at home, and drew 3-3 at home against the New England Revolution. For the Quakes, they drew 2-2 against Toronto in their last season opener, lost 2-1 at home against Montreal Impact, but they did win 3-2 against Minnesota at home for their season opener, win 1-0 against Montreal in their season opener, and then in the 2016 season opener, the Quakes did win 1-0 against the Colorado Rapids. Now, as much as I know this is probably one of the more winnable road games that the Quakes are going to have, and in some way, I really hope the Quakes can get off to a better start compared to what they have last 2 seasons under Almeida, where they always tend to get off to such a slow start before kind of finding their feet in the middle of the season. Mainly because I think I mentioned how you look at the schedule for the Quakes this season, they do have a really easy schedule to start the season, but once they get into the middle part of the season, that's when they are going to be really facing against some tough team. And if we're going to get off to a slow start again, I fear that we probably will not have a situation where we can bounce back in the middle of the season, especially facing against those very, very good team. And also in the middle of the season, we have a very heavy road kind of schedule. Now, despite all that, I do worry that the Quakes probably will be fortunate that they can get a point out of Houston. Even though Houston, I mentioned before, they're probably not going to be a playoff team or a competitive team heading into this season. Mainly because the Dynamo has pretty much owned the Quakes whenever this game is taking place at BBVA Compass Stadium. I mean, the last time the Quakes actually got 3 points against the Dynamo was all the way back in 2015. And then previously, I think they only got their other win back in 2010. So it is very rare that the Quakes can actually go to BBVA Compass Stadium to get a win against the Dynamo. And also the Dynamo, as I mentioned with their last 5 season opener, they can also use that as an evidence of why they probably could be the favorites coming into this game. But now moving on, in terms of the next match, is none other Then the rematch of the Western Conference Final between the Seattle Sounders and Minnesota United. That's going to kick off tomorrow on FS1 at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. But the actual game will not kick off until 6:55 p.m. local time. And I mentioned before, how many times do I think they're going to mention last year's Western Conference Final, and how many times they're going to show footage of what happened in last year's Western Conference Final? Well, during these last couple of weeks when FS1 basically they had the coverage and also have the broadcasting the games for all these MLS team that's involved in CCL, they already done numerous promo about this game alongside with LAFC versus Austin and also Philly versus Columbus on Sunday, and they have already shown numerous footage of last year Western Conference Final where Seattle was able to come back to win that one. So in some way, I'm not going to be kind of in a situation where I need to really look away to not see that situation, to kind of remind me that nightmare that Minnesota had back in September in Seattle when they really blew it against the Sounders and blew their chances of reaching MLS Cup. And as much as I know I said before that even if Minnesota does win in this game, and if they do win, they do get some redemption after what happened last year, I still think the only way they can erase that bad memory that they had last year against the Sounders is for them to once again go deep into the playoffs like they did last year, but only this time actually finish the job and actually reach MLS Cup. Now, in terms of the Sounders, in their last season home opener, it was against the Chicago Fire, which they were able to win 2-1. And Minnesota also won their season opener last season, and they did it on the road against the Portland Timbers by winning 3-1. Last 5 season opener for the Sounders, well, they won their last 2 season opener by winning 2-1 against Chicago, then winning 4-1 against FC Cincinnati. That was FC Cincinnati's first game in club history. But before that, they did not have a good record in terms of their season opener. They lost 1-0 against LAFC. That was LAFC's first ever game in club history. Then lose 2-1 on the road against the Dynamo before losing 1-0 at home against Sporting KC in their season home opener. For Minnesota, they also won their last 2 season home opener by winning 3-1 against the Timbers and 3-2 against Vancouver. So in some way, Minnesota has a chance to kind of go on a hat trick in terms of playing their third consecutive different Cascadia team, and if they can get the win, they basically just did a sweep in terms of winning all 3 of these Cascadia teams in 3 straight season home opener. But before that, they also struggled in their season home opener, losing 3-2 on the road against the Quakes, before in their first game in club history, they lost 5-1 against the Portland Timbers. And, for Minnesota, I really think that, especially with the way that I've heard, there's now news that Ladero will not be available in this game, which means that now they're going to be missing 2 key players on the attack. And not to mention, there's a lot of question whether or not if this Sounders team can still maybe be competitive despite losing a lot of good players this offseason. I think Minnesota does have a chance to potentially get a win in this game. But that being said, Minnesota has never beaten Seattle in their club history, and that, if they want to do it for the first time in this game, then I would definitely be very happy that of course would happen. And again, it will give some redemption of what happened last year, but not necessary in terms of erase the whole bad memory that happened in that December game that the Loons basically took on the Seattle Sounders. But now moving on, in terms of the very next game, as for some reason this pen has run out of ink, so I need to probably get another one. And I'm writing the timestamp for these games, so I can put it in the description below. But yeah, the very next game is going to be the Canadian Classic between the Montreal Impact and Toronto, and this will kick off the first of what would be 8 games that's going to be happening on Saturday, and first of what would be 3 games that are going to be matinee game, with 5 of them being nightcap for the Saturday action. But for this game between the Montreal, I almost said Montreal Impact. This is going to be something that I'm going to have to aware of myself to not call them the Montreal Impact, because they're not called the Impact anymore. They're pretty much now call themselves CF Montreal, or as the media usually they say, Club de Foot Montreal against Toronto FC. as this game is going to kick off at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific time. The actual kickoff is going to be 2:08 p.m. local time, and this game is also going to be taking place at Inter Miami Stadium because both of these Canadian team is going to at least play their first couple of home games down in Florida. Montreal, of course, won 2-1 at home against New England in their last season home opener, while Toronto, they drew 2-2 away in their last season opener to the San Jose Earthquakes. Last 5 season opener for Montreal, they, as I mentioned, won 2-1 against New England, won 2-1 on the road against the Quakes, but they did lose 2-1 on the road against Vancouver, lost 1-0 on the road against the Quakes, and then in the 2016 season opener, they won 3-2 on the road against the Vancouver Whitecaps. For Toronto, they drew 2-2 against the Quakes before winning 3-1 against the defending Supporters Shield Union in the 2019 season opener, but in the 2018 season opener, when they faced the MLS the defending MLS Cup champion, they lost 2-0 in that game. They drew 0-0 against RSL before losing 2-0 to the New York Red Bulls, and this should have been a red color, because anytime when I talk about the last 5 season opener or the last 5 games or something like that, and when a team ends up into the losing category in one of these games, I usually put a red ink in terms of that. But yeah, this should be another interesting Canadian Classic, and for TFC coming into this game, it'll be very interesting to see whether or not if they're going to get some of their starters back in this game, because I know in that game against Lyon, they were basically playing a TFC 2 team because they were missing like up to 10 starters for that one. And also, in that game against Lyon, which, that turns out to be not only a historical win for club history, but turns out to be one of the most historic win that an MLS team is able to have against a Liga MX's opponent. It'll be very interesting to see whether or not if they can either ride that momentum or maybe even have a letdown, because as much as that is a huge victory for TFC and their players are probably still celebrating with such a huge achievement that they got to make sure to not overly celebrate and realize that they have a quick turnaround to play against their biggest rival in MLS right now. And, if they're unable to do so, Montreal can definitely capitalize on that. And it also is interesting to see, is there going to be an advantage for TFC knowing the fact that they've already have 2 games under the belt compared to Montreal having played a single competitive game heading into this one? I mean, the argument to that is that, well, Montreal, they're going to be more of the fresher side, while TFC, having to play a very tough game against Lyon, where they really spent a lot of energy in that game. Will they potentially be tired out coming into this game against the Montreal Impact? But either way, I expect this should be a very good Canadian Classic, and it's a shame that this game is actually not going to be on national television, although if you're actually watching it in Canada, it technically is going to be on national television. That is going to be on TSN. But now moving on, in terms of the next match, is the other big game that a lot of people are looking forward to for this opening weekend's action, and that, of course, is Orlando City versus Atlanta. That's going to be starting the broadcast at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific time, but the actual kickoff time is going to be 3:20 p.m. local time. And the only thing that kind of ruins how this is going to be one of the game that a lot of people is going to keep their eyes on is the fact that this game is on Twitter. And if you have seen my previews before and how I mentioned how I really do not like games that is on Twitter, because I have to listen to those annoying Twitter English commentator that's probably going to have some very cringy kind of comments about this game. Yeah, that's the only thing that is going to kind of ruin of what I expect to be a very good game, and really maybe the first time where we actually see both Orlando and Atlanta could be at their top of their game, facing off against each other in this rivalry. Now, Orlando, in their last season opener, they were playing at home against RSL, and they drew 0-0 in that game. While Atlanta, they of course won 2-1 away to Nashville, who was playing their first club game first game in their club history. But that game turns out to be a costly win for Atlanta, because that was the game that they lost Joseph Martinez, and it turns out that was kind of also turns out to be the start of what would later turn out to be a very bad season that Atlanta United suffered in 2020. Now, in the last 5 season opener for Orlando, as I mentioned, they drew 0-0 against RSL, drew 2-2 against NYCFC, and draw 1-1 against DC United. They did win 1-0 against NYCFC, but before that, they did drew 2-2 against RSL. So, while Orlando has been okay in terms of their record in their last 5 season opener, they've only won 1 out of their last 5 season opener by drawing four other their season opener in their last 5 of those. For Orlando United, they of course won 2-1 against Nashville, which turns out actually was their first ever win in their season opener, because before that they lost 2-0 on the road against DC, lost 4-0 against the Houston Dynamo, before in their first ever game in club history they lost 2-1 at home against the New York Red Bulls. So yeah, again, this is going to be a game that a lot of people will keep an eye on, and I can tell that Josef Martinez coming into this game, even though I know he hasn't been good so far, or in the 2 games that he has ever since he come back from this torn ACL, he would definitely looking to try to score a goal, and that since he always called himself the father of Orlando City, something tells me he's going to score at least 1 or 2 goals against this team in this game. And if you're Orlando City, you hope that you're going to face a Josef Martinez that looked like the Josef Martinez in those 2-legged affair against Alajuelense, and not the Josef Martinez that has been haunting you throughout the last couple of times when Orlando has to face against Atlanta United. But now moving on, in terms of the next match, is going to be LAFC versus Austin FC, which will kick off at 6 p.m. Eastern. Well, the broadcast start time will be 6 p.m. Eastern and 3 p.m. Pacific time, but the actual kickoff is actually 1 minute after that at 3:01 p.m. And also, I am wearing this Austin FC jersey that I've just got a couple of days ago, and I'm wearing this, of course, in celebration of Austin FC playing their first ever game in club history. Well, their first MLS game in club history, to be exact. LAFC, of course, this is also their second year in a row where they are going to be playing their season home opener against an expansion team. Last year, they played against Inter Miami, who was an expansion team, and won 1-0 against them. And for Austin, as I mentioned, this is their first ever game. Last preseason opener for LAFC, as I mentioned before, they won 1-0 against Inter Miami, but before that, they won 2-1 against Sporting KC and won 1-0 against the Seattle Sounder in their first game in club history. So they have definitely been very good in terms of their season home opener, haven't lost or drew any of their season home opener, but this is going to be a second year in a row where they're going to be facing against an expansion team, and this expansion team that they're going to be facing, I have a feeling is going to be much tougher than what Inter Miami is the one that they faced last year, because again, when I look at this Austin team, I really like their squad, and I really like their chances to potentially be a team that competes for the playoffs. I think the only thing that maybe this team I still have question is whether or not if they can score the goals, and all those big name DP attack that they bought, the guys like Dominguez and Pochettino, whether or not if they are going to be effective heading into this season. And if they do, then this team can definitely be a playoff contender. And also for this game for Austin FC, I know this is going to be tough to face against an LAFC team that I mentioned have never lost a game in their season opener. But even if they lose this game, if they play well and play kind of like what Miami did last season against LAFC, where even in that 1-0 loss, Miami really gave LAFC all they have, and if it wasn't for a Vela special goal to basically give them that 1-0 victory, Inter Miami would have got their first point in their club history against LAFC, and they drew a lot of praise with their effort in that game against LAFC, and that if Austin can do the same thing and they can put in that effort, there's no doubt that they're going to get a lot of praise, and a lot of people are going to be very excited, and even Austin FC fans are going to be very excited the fact that this could potentially be a good season. And also, by the way, the media basically said that this is actually going to be a Matthew McConaughey versus Will Ferrell derby, which okay, I guess. That's if you want to hype it up as that way, then go ahead. But all I'll say is that this is basically a good chance for Austin FC to show what they are made of against a very tough LAFC team. But now moving on, in terms of the next match, it is going to be DC United versus NYCFC, as this will be the first of what would be 5 games that's going to be kicking off around the same time, which was 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific. I believe there's going to be 3 games that kicked off around this same time, and 2 of them will kick off half hour after this one is. So it's going to be very difficult in terms of me to try to keep up all of these games, but I'm going to try my best to at least watch a part of some of these games that is going to be the nightcap action. The actual kickoff time is going to be 8:08 p.m. DC United, of course, lost 2-1 in their season home opener last year to Colorado, while NYCFC also lost their season home opener, and it was away against the Columbus Crew. Last 5 season opener for DC United, as I mentioned, they lost 2-1 against Colorado, but they did win 2-0 against Atlanta United before drawing 1-1 against Orlando City on the road, drawing 0-0 against Sporting KC, and losing 4-1 against DC United. For NYCFC, they lost 1-0 against Columbus on the road, drew 2-2 against Orlando City, won 2-0 on the road against Sporting KC, lost 1-0 against Orlando City on the road, and then in the 2016 season opener, and this they play in probably one of the best season opener game we have seen in recent years, with them winning 4-3 on the road against the Chicago Fire. Also, this is going to be the first game that Hernan Losada is going to be coaching, and that this is pretty much officially the Hernan Losada the air kicking off for DC United. So it'll be very interesting to see how he's going to do in his very first game. But I have a feeling maybe this could be a game where we probably might not see a lot of goals, knowing the fact that the last time when DC played against NYCFC at Audi Field, they of course make some history, but probably not one that they are hoping to make, where they become only the second team in league history to register 0 shots throughout the full 90 minutes, and they also become the first MLS team in history to register 0 shot, and yet they still able to get a point, which, you know, for NYCFC, that's got to be embarrassing. The fact that you hold your opponent to no shot throughout the entire 90 minutes, and you still don't win the game and draw 0-0 in that one. But that being said, I am now going to switch boards and look at the last 4 games that's going to be happening in the Saturday action. Alright, so the next game also with a broadcast start time at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time, but the actual kickoff is going to be at 7:08 p.m. local time, will be FC Dallas taking on the Colorado Rapids. Dallas, of course, won 2-0 at home in their season opener against the defending Supporters Shield champion Philadelphia Union, while the Colorado Rapids, they won 2-1 on the road last season against DC United. And the last 5 season opener, as I mentioned, Dallas was able to win 2-0 against the Union, but they drew 1-1 against New England. Also did the same thing in the 2018 season opener against RSL before winning on the road against the Galaxy 2-1, and then winning 2-0 again against the Philadelphia Union. For Colorado, they of course won 2-1 on the road against DC United, drew 3-3 in a game we all remember being the Snow Classico against the Portland Timbers. Then they lost 2-1 on the road against New England, winning 1-0 at home against New England before losing 1-0 on the road against the San Jose Earthquakes in the 2016 season opener. And yeah, this should be a game that, you know, for Dallas, hopefully they can maybe continue their good record in terms of season opener, where they have won 3 out of their last 5 season opener and haven't lost in any of them, and that they can continue to show that they are a team that is very good at home. And that's going to be also something that they really need to rely on, because the last couple of seasons with how Dallas able to be a fringe playoff team, they always rely on their home form in a way to get themselves the points to kind of overshadow the bad road form and the bad road record that they had for the past couple of years. But for Colorado, this is another opportunity where they can do something similar to what they did last season, pull off an upset on the road. But there's no doubt that heading into this season, unlike last year, I don't think this team is going to be look as a dark horse anymore, but more like a team that, you know, with the main core that they were able to to basically build and also extend them to long-term contract. This Rapids team are looking to try to be a team that could be a competitive team heading into this season in the Western Conference. But now moving on, in terms of the next match, it is going to be the Red Bulls versus Sporting KC. That kicks off at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time. Actual kickoff time will be 8:08 p.m. The Red Bulls, of course, won 3-2 at home last year in their season opener against FC Cincinnati, while Sporting KC, they were one of the big winners in the last season opener by destroying the Dynamo 4-0 in that game. And I'm not sure why I said Dynamo there. It's actually Dynamo. No, that I actually kind of misspelled there. But last 5 season opener for the Red Bulls, as I mentioned, they were able to win 3-2 against FC Cincinnati. But then they drew 1-1 against the defending MLS Cup champion Columbus Crew. Then winning 4-0 against the Portland Timbers at home. And then also spoiling Atlanta United's first ever game in club history by winning 2-1 on the road. But they did lose 2-0 on the road against Toronto FC. For Sporting KC, they won 4-0 against the Houston Dynamo. But they did lose 2-1 on the road against LAFC. Lose 2-0 at home against NYCFC. Before it was a goalless draw they had on the road against DC United. And then it was a 1-0 win that they had against Seattle back in the 2016 season opener. So this is also a game where we are going to be featuring at least one of the team that is going to have their head coach to kind of have their regular season debut. Although what's kind of interesting about this is that, for Gerhard Struber, this is technically not his first game in charge for the Red Bulls. As you remember last year when he was taking this team in charge for the very first time, it was in the playoff game against the Columbus Crew. And I kind of mentioned how talk about using the perfect cliche of throwing your new employee right into the wolves. That was kind of the case where the Red Bulls basically just gave their new boss Gerhard Struber and basically hand him the key and realized that you also will now have to navigate your car into a Columbus team that end up winning MLS Cup that season. So that was kind of weird to see him taking his first game in charge in that one, but now he is going to get a proper start for this Red Bulls team, where now hopefully in this first game he can maybe get off to a good start or maybe even a winning start for the Red Bulls. But it's going to be hard to face against a Sporting KC team that is looking to trying to prove people last season where they finished top of the West was not a fluke and not a situation where they had a lot of easy game, and that those easy opponents that they faced kind of just gave them a ton of points so that they can finish first in the Western Conference. Now moving on into the next match, which will be between the Chicago Fire and New England. This game kicks off at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, or actually I shouldn't say kicked off, but more like the broadcast start time will be at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff time will be 7:30, 8 p.m. local time. Chicago, of course, in their last season opener, they lost 2-1 away to the Seattle Sounders, while New England, they also did the same thing, but this time losing 2-1 away to Montreal. Last 5 season opener, in fact, both of these teams have not been great whatsoever in terms of season opener. For Chicago, they lost 2-1, as I mentioned, to Seattle in last year's season opener, before doing the same thing, but only to the LA Galaxy. Then they lost 4-3 at home against Sporting KC in their 2018 season opener, before drawing 1-1 against the defending MLS Cup champion Columbus, and then losing 4-3 at home against Orlando City in the 2016 season opener. For New England, 2-1 loss against Montreal on the road in last year's season opener, before drawing 1-1 against FC Dallas. Then they lost 2-0 against the Union in their 2018 season opener on the road, before losing 1-0 on the road against the Colorado Rapids, and then drawing 3-3 against the Houston Dynamo in their 2016 season home opener. So you kind of think that something has to give in terms of both of these teams, where with the way that neither of these teams has been able to win their last 5 season opener, one of these teams are looking to try to get up to finally break that spell. And if you want to ask me who most likely could potentially do so, I think New England might do, knowing the fact that they're going to prove people that last year with how amazing their road record was not actually a fluke, and that they can can get off to a good start. Although they are going to be playing against a Fire team that last season, at least at home, they were a very, very good team, and pretty much almost all the points that they got last season was at home, because I know last year they were also one of the two teams that weren't able to get any wins on the road last season, and that might be something that this season could be the case again, where the Fire is going to have to really rely on their home form, because they do struggle whenever they go on the road. And then finally, the last game that I am going to be talking about in this part 1 of the preview is none other than Nashville SC versus FC Cincinnati. So I mentioned before, this is probably the most underrated matchup in the opening weekend's action, because this I would like to call the USL derby, with both of these teams being former USL championship team, and also both of these teams do not like each other whatsoever when they were in the USL championship. But yeah, this game kicks off at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, and the actual kickoff will be 7:38 p.m. local time. Nashville, of course, lost 2-1 at home in their first ever game in club history, and in their club debut against Atlanta. While Cincinnati lost 3-2 away in their season home opener against the Red Bulls. And just what I said about this previous game, neither of these teams has been able to do well in their season opener. In fact, neither of these teams have even got a result in their season opener. Nashville, of course, lost 2-1, as I mentioned, last year in their first ever game in club history. While for Cincinnati, they lost 3-2 on the road against the Red Bulls, and lost 4-1 in their first ever game in club history against the Seattle Sounders. So this was really kind of a game where something's going to have to give, where somebody is going to finally get either their first win of their short history in a season opener, or both of these teams maybe get their first draw in their season home opener. But yeah, this is definitely going to be a very interesting game, and like I said, both of these teams, they do not like each other whatsoever. And you know, it's kind of such a shame that last year both of these teams weren't able to face off against each other, and it's kind of weird the fact that both of these teams did not face off each other, because in terms of regionalized, Nashville is actually pretty close to Cincinnati, and you would think with how MLS decided to go with regional matchup last year, you would think we at least see a Nashville versus FC Cincinnati game, and also both of those teams were actually in the same conference. But this year, I think we're going to see more of this matchup. I think this will be the first of 3 matchups that they're going to be facing against FC Cincinnati. And yeah, you know, I know for a fact that Cincinnati is definitely looking for some revenge after what happened a couple of years ago in the USL Championship, where, remember in the playoffs when both of these teams faced off in the first round, it was Nashville, the one that actually pull off an upset and knock off top seeded FC Cincinnati in that playoff game. And I think it was, I believe it was, did it off a penalty, or maybe by a very close accurate score. But either way, you know, FC Cincinnati probably have not forgotten about that, and they're definitely looking for some revenge in this game against Nashville. But yeah, either way, that is pretty much it for the first part of the preview of these opening weekend's matchup for this upcoming 2021 MLS season. Like I said, I am going to be doing the second part of the preview and look at the last 3 remaining games that's going to be happening on Sunday, on Saturday. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of these games, and also make sure you leave your prediction below of all these 10 games that's going to be happening on Friday and Saturday. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.